My name is Raymond Caulder. I'm 63 years old, and on a Tuesday afternoon in March, 2 years after my back gave out and put me on disability, I watched a county tax officer slide a lien warning across my kitchen table. Inside the same house where my wife Carol's quilting frame still had her last unfinished project stretched across it, because I hadn't been able to bring myself to touch it in the 14 months since she died. I was sitting at that kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, and I wasn't crying. I want you to understand that. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't on the phone with anybody. I was just sitting there in the quiet, staring at a stack of envelopes under the yellow light above the sink, and I was doing math in my head that kept coming out wrong no matter how many times I ran it. $1,147 a month. That's what I had coming in, Social Security disability. Every month, like clockwork, on the third Wednesday, 1147. I knew that number the way I knew my own name. And I knew the other numbers too. The electric bill, the gas, the water, the property tax installment, the homeowner's insurance that had gone up for the third year running, the HOA fee that felt like a joke someone forgot to stop telling, the grocery runs, the prescription copays. I added them up in my head, slowly, the way my father taught me to do math. Out loud, deliberate, no rushing. And when I got to the end of the column, I sat back in that chair and I just looked at the ceiling for a long time. Because the number on the bottom wasn't 1147. It was 1,400 and change. Every single month going out. More than what was coming in. And it had been that way for longer than I wanted to admit. I want to ask you something before I go any further. And I want you to actually think about it. Not just let it wash over you. When was the last time you looked at your bank account? Really looked at it. And felt safe. Not fine. Not okay. Safe. Because I hadn't felt that in a long time. And I didn't even know how long, until I was sitting at that table at 11 o'clock at night, and the house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum from 2 rooms away. And I realized that I hadn't felt safe since before Carol died. Carol was my wife. 31 years. We met at a church potluck in the fall of 1989, and I thought she was the most direct woman I had ever spoken to in my life. She didn't waste words. Neither did I. We were married inside of 14 months, and I never once questioned whether it was the right decision. She died on a Tuesday afternoon in March, 14 months before that night at the kitchen table. A drunk driver ran a red light on Route 9, and she never made it to the hospital. She had been on her way to pick up a birthday card from my mother. My mother passed 8 months later. The doctor said it was cancer, and that's true. But I'll tell you what I believe. I believe she didn't see a reason to fight very hard once Carol was gone. They had loved each other in the quiet way that women of that generation did. Steadily and without a lot of ceremony. My father went the following spring, 18 months after Carol. His heart. My brother-in-law, Terrence, Carol's sister's husband, a man I had known and worked beside for over 2 decades, gone the winter after that. 4 people. 26 months. I want you to sit with that for a second. 4 people gone in just over 2 years. And I was 62 years old, with a back that had put me on disability since 2019, living alone in a 4-bedroom house in Central Virginia that we had bought together, Carol and I, back when the neighborhood was quiet and the taxes were reasonable and the future felt wide open. I was the last one standing. And the house, that big, silent house, was full of them. Every room, every closet, every shelf and drawer and corner of that garage. Carol's quilting table was in the spare room, exactly where she left it, with a half-finished project still stretched across the frame. I hadn't touched it. couldn't. Her mother's china was in the cabinet in the dining room. My father's toolboxes, the big red snap-on rolling chest, and the smaller ones lined up beside it, tools he had collected for 40 years as an auto mechanic. Those were out in the garage, exactly as he had left them when he got too sick to use them. Terrence's Harley parts were stacked in the corner under a tarp. My mother's button tin, my father's Korean War photographs, and the shoebox on the closet shelf. 38 years of a family's life packed into a 4-bedroom house in Virginia, and I could not let go of a single piece of it. Not for the first year. I touched nothing. I moved through those rooms like a man walking through a museum of his own life, careful not to disturb anything, as if the moment I moved something, the last trace of them would vanish too. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. I need you to understand what I mean when I say the math didn't work, because it isn't abstract. Let me be specific. My property taxes had gone up 22% over 3 years. My electric bill in winter was running close to $340 a month because that house was old and the insulation was poor, and I hadn't had the money to fix it. My homeowner's insurance renewal came in 11% higher than the year before, and when I called to ask why, the woman on the phone was polite but offered me nothing. The HOA sent me a letter about the gutters. The gutters. I'm sitting in a house full of the dead, trying to figure out how to make $1147 cover $1,400 worth of fixed expenses, and I'm getting letters about the gutters. And then one afternoon in October, I went to the mailbox and there was a different kind of letter. Official looking. Return address from the county tax office. It was a lien warning. I had fallen behind on 2 installments. Not by much. I had been paying partial amounts, keeping them at bay, but the letter was clear. If the balance wasn't resolved within 60 days, they would begin the process of placing a lien on the property. I sat down on the porch steps and read that letter 3 times. And something clicked into place that afternoon that I had been refusing to let click. Something I had been keeping at arm's length for a year and a half because I wasn't ready to face it. The house was going to go one way or another. Either I was going to sell it on my own terms, with some control over what happened and what I walked away with, or I was going to fight this losing battle month after month, draining what little reserves I had, until the county or the bank or the next unexpected expense took it from me entirely, and I'd walk away with nothing. Those were the only 2 options. I sat on those steps until the sun went down and I faced that truth. And then I made the hardest decision of my life. I was going to sell. I'm going to tell you something about selling the place you raised your life in. Nobody prepares you for the practical brutality of it. It isn't one moment of grief. It's 1,000 small ones spread out over weeks. I called an estate sale company first. A woman named Brenda came out, walked through every room with a clipboard and a poker face, and gave me an assessment. She was professional, efficient. She didn't say anything unkind, but watching her write down Carol's quilting table on that clipboard, just a line item, just a number, I had to step outside and stand in the yard for a few minutes. We ran 3 estate sales over 6 weeks. Strangers came through my house and picked up the things my family had spent their lives accumulating, turned them over in their hands, and either bought them or put them back. Carol's mother's china went to a woman who said she collected transferware. My father's Korean War photographs, I held those back. There were some things I wasn't willing to put a price on. Between the estate sales, the Facebook marketplace listings I ran myself at night on my phone, and the junk hauler I finally had to call for what was left, it took 2 months to empty that house down to the walls. I want to be honest with you. Some days, I felt like I was betraying them, like I was erasing them to save myself. And maybe there's some truth in that. I'm not here to tell you I handled all of it with perfect grace, because I didn't. There were nights where I sat in an emptying house, and I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing. But the lien letter was still on the kitchen counter, and the bills were still coming in, and I had to keep moving. Closing day came on a cold morning in January. I had accepted an offer of $112,000. After the HELOC we'd taken out years back, after the back taxes, after the realtor fees and the closing costs, I walked away with $61,000. I held that check in my hands in the parking lot of the title company, and I just stood there. The sky was the color of old pewter. My truck was running in the lot because I'd left it idling so it would be warm. $61,000 and everything I owned fit in that truck. I had done a lot of research in those final weeks before closing, and I had made some decisions that people in my life thought were either brave or crazy, depending on who you asked. I had bought a 2004 Ford E350 box truck for $5,000 from an outfit that was clearing their fleet, and I had bought a small pull-behind camper, used, 12 years old but solid, for $3,400. $8,400 total for my new home. I drove out to a piece of land in rural Virginia owned by an old Army buddy of mine named Darnell. We'd kept in touch across 40 years, the way some men do, not constantly, but reliably. When I called him and explained my situation, he didn't hesitate for very long. He had 40 acres he wasn't using fully, and he needed someone to keep an eye on things, chase off trespassers, maintain the fencing, manage the gate. We made a simple agreement. I would caretake his land, and I could park on his back acreage for free. No rent, no lease, no landlord. I want to tell you what it looks like to live in a camper on a friend's land in February in Virginia with no hookups. It looks like 3 layers of clothing to sleep in. It looks like a propane heater that you run on a careful schedule because propane costs money and the tank doesn't last as long as you need it to. It looks like condensation on the inside of the walls every morning and wiping it down with an old towel before it soaks into anything. It looks like driving 15 minutes to a gas station to fill water jugs because you don't have running water. It looks like going to bed early because there's nothing else to do, and the cold is easier to tolerate when you're horizontal under 2 blankets. It looks like a very specific kind of quiet that you either make peace with or lose your mind inside of. I had a Sunday in February, about 6 weeks in, where I opened my banking app and the number on the screen was $214. That was everything. That was the whole of it. $214, until the next disability payment arrived in 11 days. I sat in that camper and I looked at that number for a long time. There was a Holiday Inn Express about 4 miles down the road. I had the address half typed into my phone before I stopped myself. I could put 2 nights on a credit card. Hot shower, real bed, climate control. Just 2 nights. Just to breathe for a second. I put the phone down. I want to be clear. I almost didn't. I was closer to breaking than I've ever admitted to anyone. If you have never been truly cold and truly alone and down to $200, I'm not asking you to fully understand that moment. I'm just telling you it happened, because I think the truth of it matters. I put the phone face down on the little table in the camper. I turned the propane up 1 notch, and I went to sleep. 11 days later, the deposit hit. And that's when I started the lockbox. Here's the secret, and I'm going to tell it to you plainly because it isn't complicated. And I think sometimes we make survival sound more sophisticated than it is because we're embarrassed by how simple the real answer turned out to be. Starting in month 2 on Darnell's land, I went to the bank, withdrew $100 in cash, and I put it in a small fireproof lockbox that I had bolted to the floor of the box truck. Every single month, without fail, regardless of how the month had gone, regardless of what had broken or what had come up or what I felt, $100 bill. into the box. Not an app, not an investment account, not a strategy somebody sold me on the internet. A metal box, bolted to a floor, with a key I kept on a chain around my neck. The month I had $214, I still put $100 in the box. I know how that sounds. I know some of you are doing the math right now and thinking $100 a month is nothing. And you're right that it isn't a fortune. But here is what it is. It is proof. Every single month, it is proof to yourself that you are not in free fall, that you have a direction, that you are in control of something, even when everything else feels like it's being controlled by forces you can't see or touch or reason with. That box was the difference between surviving and just enduring. I need you to understand that distinction. I also started making videos around month 3. I didn't start for any strategic reason. I started because I was alone in a camper in the dark, and I needed to speak to something. I had no idea if anyone would watch. I didn't have good lighting or a script or a plan. I just set up my phone on a little tripod I bought for $8, and I talked about what was happening. About how it felt to sell the house. About February. About the lockbox. About how I talked to Carol sometimes, out loud, when no one was around to hear. People watched. And then people started writing to me. People who were 67 and terrified. People who were 59 and already seeing the walls close in. People who had lost spouses, lost jobs, lost their way inside of houses they could no longer afford, but couldn't bring themselves to leave. People who told me I was saying the things they had been thinking for 2 years, but couldn't say to anyone in their actual lives because they were too afraid of what people would think. I want to tell you, those people kept me alive. Not dramatically, quietly. The same way Darnell's steady handshake kept me alive, the same way Carol kept me alive for 31 years. Just by being there. Just by making the darkness a little less absolute. Month by month, the lockbox filled. My expenses on that land were almost nothing. Propane, water, food, phone bill. The truck needed work once, a brake job that cost me more than I wanted to spend. But I did a lot of the maintenance myself because I had been an electrician for decades and I'm not afraid of mechanical things. I started picking up small, odd jobs in the area. Wiring work, helping a neighbor put up a fence. Nothing steady, nothing grand, but a few $100s here and there that I could fold into the savings. I learned something those 3 years that I could not have learned any other way. I learned the difference between needing shelter and needing that house, because I had confused them. For a long time, I'd believed they were the same thing. That house was Carol, was my parents, was everything that had made me who I was. And I had believed that without it, I would be less of a person. That without those 4 walls, I would be untethered, unrecognizable to myself. But I wasn't. I was still me. Older, leaner, quieter, but still me. And I was carrying Carol now in a way I couldn't when she was everywhere around me, and I couldn't move without touching something she had touched. I was carrying her lighter. I was carrying all of them lighter. Because I'd had to choose what actually mattered, not symbolically, but literally in a truck with limited space. And what I chose told me something about who I actually am. 3 years. 36 monthly deposits. $3,600 in a metal box bolted to the floor of a truck. $4,100 in a savings account I had not touched since I opened it. All debts cleared. Everything owed, paid. Balance? 0. A clean slate. Last month, I closed on a 1.3-acre lot in rural Tennessee. Cash. No mortgage, no bank, no payment plan. Mine. There is a spring on the back half of the property. There are 2 old oaks near the road that have been there longer than I have been alive. The soil is good. The nearest neighbor is far enough away that when I park the camper and sit outside in the evening, the only thing I can hear is what's actually there. I move in 29 days. I am not telling you this to impress you. I don't need your admiration. I'm telling you because I think you might be sitting somewhere right now in your own version of that kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, running numbers that keep coming out wrong, surrounded by things you can't let go of, and a life that has gotten too expensive to maintain and too heavy to carry. And I want to tell you, as clearly and as plainly as I know how, that the hole is not going to get shallower while you wait. Every month you hold on to something that is costing you more than it is giving you back, the hole gets a little deeper. The system does not care that you are grieving. The property tax bill does not care that the house is full of memories. The insurance company does not care what you've been through. They send the notices on schedule, every time, because they are not human and this is not personal to them, even though it is entirely personal to you. I am not telling you to walk away from everything you love. I am telling you to look, honestly, without flinching, at what you are holding and ask yourself if you are holding it, or if it is holding you. Because there is a version of you on the other side of this. I know that because I'm standing in it. And it doesn't look like what I thought it would look like. It's smaller. It's quieter. But it is mine in a way that the 4-bedroom house with the lien morning was not. I shed the old skin. It hurt more than I have words for. And what grew back was something I recognize. You still have time, but I want you to hear this, only just. If what I shared today gave you something, a little clarity, a little company, the sense that someone else has been in the hole and climbed out, I want you to leave a comment below. Tell me where you are in your story. Tell me what you're holding on to. Tell me what scares you most. I read every one. And if you think someone in your life needs to hear this, a neighbor, a sibling, someone who has been quiet lately in a way that worries you, share this with them. Don't overthink it. Just send it. Hit the like button if this reached you. It's a small thing, but it tells me to keep going. And if you're new here, subscribe. This channel is not about tricks or shortcuts. It's about what survival actually looks like when you're past 60 and the system isn't built for you. Every video is the truth, as close as I can get it. I'll see you on the other side.